Some people get into world building for games like D&D because they love writing. Maybe they dream of writing a novel that takes place in their setting someday, or maybe they already have. I am not that person. The last thing I want to do is write a whole novel's worth of content, just so that I can finally bring a cool setting to the table for my players to go through. But here's the thing. When I first started world building, I thought I had to. When you're getting started, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. You just need so many things. And if acronyms like grapes, harems, or hermetics don't either scare you off or bore you to death, I'm sure that the prep work will. But what if I told you that you don't need to do any of that to create a unique campaign that your players will rave about? Because today, I'm going to be talking about a secret third option for world building for your campaign. I'm going to teach you how to kitbash that shit. It's the fastest way to build a world that's rich and unique and dynamic, and most of all, fun for you. Curious? Let's dive in. Okay, so what even is kitbashing? And how can it save you weeks or even months of prep time? If you've never heard the term kitbashing before, it's a concept that comes from the model maker and wargamer world. It's when you combine parts from different model kits to create something that's totally new. And I don't kitbash minis myself, yet, but I'm obsessed with creators that do. Some of my favorites? The Craftsman Steady Craftin', Bill Making Stuff, and Studson Studios. And this list could honestly go on forever if you let me. But these creators take pre-made pieces and turn them into something totally unique. And that's exactly what we're about to do with campaign building. Instead of starting from scratch, we can take pre-existing materials, published adventures, books, TV shows, you name it, and then combine them into a beautiful Frankenbaby world for your players to enjoy. So why should you kitbash when you could just use a pre-made module or write everything yourself? Kitbashing has 3 massive benefits. It can save you a ton of time. Kitbashing can help you get your ideas to the table a hell of a lot faster than writing everything out manually yourself. And while you might feel inspired enough to create the major NPCs for your world, with kitbashing you can borrow the minor ones from existing sources and just plop them into your world. For example, instead of creating a dozen different tavern owners, you can pull one from a published source, tweak their backstory, and voila! Instant NPC creation without sacrificing quality. It can help prevent burnout. Building a world entirely from scratch can be a daunting and endless task. With kitbashing, you let other creators do some of the heavy lifting. Need a sprawling city? Borrow the layout from a fantasy map you already love and tweak a few things in it. Adapt it to your needs and save your energy so you can focus on more important things, like tying your characters' backstories into the campaign. And most importantly, it helps highlight what makes your world unique. When you try to reinvent everything from currency to politics to geography, you risk creating something that ends up feeling weirdly generically otherworldly, or even worse, incoherent. But if you focus on tweaking just a few standout elements, those differences get a chance to truly shine. Kitbashing lets you skip over those parts of world building that simply don't have as big of an impact on your story. And here's something I try to keep in mind when I feel myself getting carried away. Think about the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. What's the 20% of your world building that will have the biggest impact on your players' enjoyment? Focus your energy there and kitbash the rest. But let's address the elephant in the room. Isn't this cheating? No. And if you're worried about it, let me ask, are you publishing your campaign? Or are you just trying to run a great game for your friends to enjoy? That's what I thought. Another concern I hear is this belief that kitbashed worlds are gonna feel disjointed. And yeah, sure, they can, but trust me, there's a super simple trick to avoid this. In just a moment, I'll teach you how to tie everything together seamlessly. But finally, the most common question I get: what happens if a player recognizes a source that I borrowed from? Congratulations! It's an Easter egg! It's just an opportunity to upend expectations or let them feel clever for spotting the reference. Win-win. Complete non-issue. So let's look at a real example of kitbashing from one of my campaigns. I wanted to run a Feywild adventure, but the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, while being very fun, didn't quite fit the vibe I was going for. On the other hand, Changeling the Lost had that dark, messed up, real Fey vibe. So naturally, I just smushed them together like Barbies and made them kiss. I kept the concept of the hedge from Changeling, a dangerous liminal space between the mortal and Fey realms, and then I also borrowed their Fey court system that goes way past Seelie and Unseelie. Then I incorporated a vastly different source of inspiration in the form of Stephen King, one of my favorite authors. I really like stories like The Mist and Under the Dome that explore themes like isolation and power vacuums and power struggles. Power. And so that became the backbone of my world's conflict. So I ended up with the players starting in the small town of Crowside, a town surrounded by forests that had essentially been reclaimed by the Fae, and now mortals couldn't leave without risking their lives. My campaign's big bad? From A Court of Thorn and Roses, yes. I literally took my villain from a romantic fantasy novel. The takeaway? Some ideas come from TTRPG sources, while others can come from literally anywhere. And here's the thing. Our brains are already doing this little collage-making activity all of the time. We're constantly taking inspiration from things and meshing it together with other things. The trick is to become hyper-aware of where ideas come from, and then use that awareness to our advantage. When you embrace this, you can consciously select influences that make your games more exciting. Great candidates for kitbashing include NPCs. Mike Shea of Sly Flourish recently wrote a fantastic article about using TV show characters and movie characters in your games as NPCs. His totally genius tip: lift entire casts of characters. That way they already have built-in relationships and conflicts. And of course you can do this with your major NPCs, but I personally love the idea of taking a bunch of characters from a rom-com like Forgetting Sarah Marshall and making them quirky tavern patrons that your players can interact with. And if your players are anything like mine and really want to test how much of a simulation is the simulation, this would really be a blast and would at least result in a side quest, if not more. Locations are another great candidate. Fantasy and sci-fi movies especially are treasure troves for cool location ideas. I definitely straight up lifted the Goblin Market from Hellboy 2 for my campaign, and from there I just took some items from The Wild Beyond the Witchlight and from Changeling the Lost and Changeling the Dreaming, and bam! I instantly had a bustling, otherworldly bazaar for my players to explore. Monster stat blocks are another great candidate, because creating homebrew monsters can be really rewarding, but it can also be very, very time consuming. And sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. One of the things I like to do is kind of reverse engineer monsters. I kind of do this in the style of the book The Monsters Know What They're Doing. So you start with the type of tactical fight that you want your players to have. Do they need to use stealth, strength, or maybe clever teamwork? But then you go ahead and pick a base monster stat block, and I really like the Tome of Beasts books for this, but then you just tweak some spells and abilities and poof, easy monster creation. And reflavoring is your best friend here. Something like a basic Blink Dog stat block can be given a complete facelift by giving a few extra level appropriate abilities based on dog breed. So if kitbashing sounds like it's your jam, let's dive in. But first, if you're enjoying this video, please let me know by liking and subscribing so you can see my face in the future. So where should you begin? Start at the top. What's the big idea that you're most excited about? Is it a theme, a tone, or a story concept? For my campaign, it was combining dark Feywild vibes with Stephen King's themes of isolation and power that he uses in The Mist and Under the Dome. And the reason you want to start here is because all of your other choices should support this theme and tone. And this is actually where some of those world building frameworks can actually really shine. If I'm looking for ideas I might use something like the doppelganger framework from Anto of Icarus Games. That way I can zero in on the aspects of world building that'll really stand out to my players. You'll want to focus on one or two elements that seem particularly different or particularly interesting compared to insert generic fantasy world here, because after that, the rest will fall into place. Then it's time to start idea harvesting. Pull ideas from a variety of sources that you love. In just a few seconds, I'll share some of my personal favorites. But variety is the key to making sure that your campaign doesn't feel like some weird knockoff version of something that your players already know. And don't forget that every piece you bring in should support your theme or tone. And I'm an avid Pinterest and Notion user for this sort of stuff. I store a lot between those two sources. But know it's okay that not every idea works for every campaign. Don't be afraid to save some things for later adventures. But now comes the fun part. Mash, reflavor, reimagine. What if your way into the coolest campaign you have ever run? Ask yourself, what if Old Bone Grinder from Curse of Strahd was the central part of the campaign? How can I take that idea and mash it up with other inspirations that I love? How about Soylent Green? What about Ratatouille? What background stories and goals can I come up with that tie everything together? And you don't have to stay true to your source material. This is your world now. There aren't TTRPG police, and there certainly aren't kitbashing police. Bend it, twist it, reimagine it until the world feels truly unique and yours. Ready to get started? Here are some of my favorite sources of inspiration. Naturally, TTRPG books, but from any system. Don't limit yourself to just D&D. I really love Vaesen, Changeling the Lost, and Dragonborn. And I also really like checking out indie zines. I personally really love old issues of MCDM's Arcadia. I'm going to Acadia this year. So I'm gonna make that mistake a lot. I can feel it. But you don't need any special system agnostic type of stuff. You just need to get comfortable with experimenting. TV shows and movies are another natural source. From fantasy to sitcoms, everything's fair game. Some of my favorites to draw from have been Annihilation, Atlantis the Lost Empire, and The Gilded Age. Books are another great contender. I've always loved the Discworld books and can't wait to try the new game from Modiphius. And I still reread my Tamora Pierce and Diana Wynne Jones series all the time. Another great reading source is world folklore and mythology. I get a ton of great ideas from there. Video games are another personal favorite, especially for locations, because I really love immersive world type games like The Witcher or Elden Ring. And my crafting system that I use in a lot of my games is even inspired by Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And I'll make sure to link to it below. But an unexpected source I use all the time are art books. They're probably my favorite place to get ideas from, especially concept art books for things. But I also really love Brian Froud, Mike Mignola, and I'll even just browse Pinterest and ArtStation looking for things that catch my eye. Podcasts are also a source I feel is underutilized. I love incorporating paranormal and cryptid tales from sources like Otherworld, or from This Paranormal Life. Rory and Kit get bonus points because they never fail to make me laugh. But I also love mining story-based podcasts like Spooked or The Moth Story Hour. They can be really great sources for NPC relationship type stories. So tell me, what are your favorite sources for inspiration? What wild ideas have you kitbashed into your campaigns? Share your stories in the comments, I'd love to hear them. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out these other videos for even more TTRPG ideas.